In one of President Lincoln's inaugural addresses, he talked about how the United States of America needed to stay together and not break up. The South wanted to keep their slaves, and the North wanted them to be free. That made the North and South mad at each other, which caused the South to want to leave. So when the South wanted to leave, it made the North furious, and President Lincoln did not allow the South to leave. So in 1861, there was a peace conference in Washington, and that was supposed to keep the Civil War from starting, but obviously it didn't work, and the Civil War broke out in April of 1861. The Union won that war, and they made the South free all their slaves. What would have happened if the South succeeded? So in Washington, the peace conference had worked, which all the states had allowed the South to keep their slaves on one condition. They said that slavery is outlawed in the United States, but if they weren't a part of the United States, then it wouldn't be a problem. If President Lincoln wasn't exactly in favor of the southern states leaving, but he thought that life was more important than letting a few states leave. So when the South left, it kind of made the northern citizens mad, and now they think that Lincoln is going to let any state get away with something. So in the election of 1864, George McClellan beat Abraham Lincoln because the northern citizens were mad that the South was allowed to leave. McClellan was in the military, and his campaign had a lot to do with the South leaving, and he said that he could have saved the United States. He also said that he would have fought the South and forced them to be a part of the United States again. In this political cartoon, it shows how McClellan was willing to fight the Confederacy and force them back into the United States. He also set up blockades so that the South couldn't trade with any other country because most countries needed the cotton. He also wouldn't allow any U.S. citizens to trade with the South. So the South's constitution was very close to the United States, except for just a few changes. The president's term is now 6 years instead of 4, and slaves are legal. After the South's secession, their economy was booming, and since they didn't have to pay the slaves, the plantations were making more and more money. The European countries needed the goods that the South had, so trade between them was very, very important. Since the South's economy was doing so well, they wanted to expand out west, so they took some western territories like Oklahoma and Arizona, and even though the North didn't like the idea of the South gaining more territory, they didn't really put up a fight. So by the time World War I came around, the North and the South still weren't really willing to trade with each other, and the South traded with both the good and bad guys of World War I, but the North would only trade with the good guys, and they finally convinced the South to do the same. But since the South quit trading with the Triple Alliance, it really made a huge impact on the war, and it pretty much changed the outcome of World War I. So when World War II came, both the North and the South's economies were doing very, very well. Both the South and the North wanted to stay out of World War II, but they both agreed that the Axis was wrong. What they were doing was just bad. The United States would only join the war if the South would join with them. So once the USA and the CSA, or the Confederate States of America, joined, the war ended very, very quickly. Since the USA is smaller than it is now, we never became a world superpower, and the North and South were very different than they are today.